Well, good morning. It's New Thought Talk. I am the Rev Steve. Welcome to our show today. It's just amazing what good comes into our life when we realize that good can come into our life. And today, what I wanted to talk to you about, our topics here are New Thought topics, and we talk about prosperity, we talk about creating a life, we talk about a lot of things, but the source or the foundation, if you will, the bottom line understanding is what we see as our concept of the divine, what we call God. And so I want to talk about God today. I want to talk about the history of God as it's understood by mankind and how it's kind of kept us trapped and how it is in today's life, how by changing our understanding, by evolving our understanding, our lives can change. It's only been about between 4,000 and 6,000 years that mankind believed in a single deity. Before that, the history of God was really the history of many gods. We had gods of war and gods of thunder and gods of relationships and gods of fire and all sorts of stuff. And somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 years ago, concept of a single deity, monotheistic religion came into the world. Now, depending on the source, the general rule seems to be that one of the very first monotheistic religions to come to the fore was a religion that was called Zoroastrianism. And it appears to be the forerunner to both the Judean concept of God, and also for a brief period of time, at about 1300 BC, there was an Egyptian understanding of a monotheistic God under the rule of Akhenaten. And it didn't last very long. They went back to their polytheistic understanding of multiple gods. And in the Western world, between the Greeks and the Romans, we had advent of polytheism in the areas of Great Britain where there were Celts and other individuals. Pagan religions grew up, nature religions grew up. But somewhere between 1300 and 3000 BC is when historians and archaeologists pretty much tag the beginning of the Judean understanding of the monotheistic God, the Abrahamic God, if you will, which is the foundation for both Judaism and Christianity and Islam, and has been granted the major understanding in the Western world. So at that point in time, we see this single deity come into the understanding of mankind. But this God at this time was a God of wrathfulness, a God of judgment, a God of vengeance, a capricious God, a God that demanded blood sacrifice, a God that demanded subservience and worship, a God that ruled with an iron fist, if you will. But it was also a God that had a beingness to it, a God that was a being. Genesis tells us that God walked through the Garden of Eden. And so that basic concept of God came down through the Old Testament times. And that was pretty much the understanding of the Hebrews in that part of the world. And they were, at that time, they were the only truly monotheistic religion besides Zoroastrianism. And then we had somewhere around 2,000 years ago, we had this fellow walking around, and he was a rebel. He brought a whole new concept of understanding of God. He threw out the old beliefs and he brought in new beliefs. And we know him today as Jesus, and some people refer to him as Jesus Christ or Jesus the Christ. But he was an itinerant Jewish rabbi, and he taught a radical understanding of God for the day. And he ran afoul of the world at that time. And historians and archaeologists say that, basically he made a nuisance of himself, and he was condemned and executed for that. The New Testament tells us that he claimed to be the king of the Jews, or he was the Son of God, and therefore he was crucified, and the whole resurrection process took place. But today, in the world today, Christianity being a couple thousand years old, people today, and this has been a major issue within the Christian church, people are leaving Christianity in large numbers. And the thing is, they're not leaving Christianity necessarily because they've lost their desire to live a spiritual life, but they're leaving Christianity because the concepts, the dogmas, the theology that has basically been taught to us as being frozen in time, but in reality, it also has evolved. But it has kept people in an understanding that as the rest of the world began to change, that understanding didn't begin to change. The God that walked through the Garden of Eden is still the God of the fundamental Christian belief system today. But it hasn't always been that way. And although the many religions, many Christian religions, denominations would like us to believe that that's been a consistent, constant understanding throughout time, in reality it hasn't. In the first 2 to 3 centuries after the death of Jesus, there was no homogeneous church. There was no There was no set dogma. Things were morphing and evolving. There was a fellow by the name of Marcion who came about in he was born at the end of the 1st century, and during the early parts of the 2nd century, Marcion wrote a book. And he wrote a book that was his gospel, if you will. And it scandalized the world, because Marcion's understanding of Jesus, and he called himself a Christian, was that Jesus, one, had no humanity to himself. He was all spirit. And two, that the God of the Father of Jesus was not the God of the Jewish Old Testament. That the God of the Jewish Old Testament was this evil, wrathful being, and that when Jesus came, this divine being, he came and he taught about this new God, which was the true God. And so this God was the God of love and the God of joy and peace and harmony. And in Marcion's understanding in the day, a God of that nature wouldn't have taken and crucified and sacrificed somebody, but would have created a divine being to come down and deliver the message and go through the process seemingly, but in reality it didn't happen. So Marcion wrote his book, this is the first gospel, if you will, that laid out a teaching, a Christian teaching. And in what historians call the proto-Orthodox church, it was scandalous. It wasn't the main party line, if you will. And Marcion, because of this, has really been credited with being the focal point of the formation of what today we know as the New Testament. Now, if you look at it that way, we begin to see that the New Testament didn't come together, if we look at it from an archaeological, historical point of view, didn't come together as some divine book that came out of nowhere. The New Testament was and is a library of books. The first books that were written in the New Testament were actually the epistles of Paul. And Paul had no direct knowledge of Jesus. He didn't meet him. He claimed to have a mystical experience, but he didn't even teach what Jesus taught. As a matter of fact, in all of Paul's epistles, he only mentions what Jesus taught on 2 different occasions. One is that we should pay our ministers, and 2, that we shouldn't be divorced. Everything else was what Paul understood about Jesus. And it was part of the oral tradition of the time. And it was part of Paul's own enlightenment, if you will. And there were other Christianities that were taking place during that time. There was a group called the Ebionites, and the Bible doesn't mention them directly by name, but it does mention the conflict between the Ebionite type of believers and the what became the Orthodox Christian Church. The Ebionites were people that believed you had to convert to Judaism to be a Christian. After all, early Christians were Jews, and so that was kind of the beginning. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of giving us a little background. We're going to get to the biblical understanding of God, and then we're going to see how that translates in today and what that means for us. So we're off to our first break. I'll see you when we come back.
What's new at the Fulton 55? Fulton 55 is Fresno's hottest venue at Fulton and Divisadero.
You need your carpets cleaned, but you don't have a lot of money. The solution is JRT Carpet Cleaning. Clean up to 3 bedrooms, living room, and hall for just $99. Let the professionals do the job. Call JRT Carpet Cleaning today.
In 1985, Larry Korth set out to help his friends, family, and community find affordable ways to buy a home or a business property. 30 years later, Mid-Valley Financial is the premier mortgage banker in the Central Valley. The professional staff at Mid-Valley will find the best mortgage products for your family. Mid-Valley Financial takes great pride in being the Central Valley's local lender. Visit us at midvalleyfinancial.com.
Before you call one of those discount insurance places, you should know the facts. Fresno's CCIS can get you up to a 26% discount on your car, homeowners, and life insurance needs. Call 320-2247 or go to ccisinsurance.com.
Considering solar? Whether you're ready to buy now or just exploring your options, the consultants at Solar Negotiators are here to help you. A call to Solar Negotiators is like calling 5 solar companies at once. You see, when local established solar contractors have gaps in their schedule, they call Solar Negotiators to fill them. Right now, get 5 years of panel cleaning and maintenance or $1,000 off your new solar panels. So stop wasting your time searching and call Solar Negotiators, because when contractors compete for your business, you win.
Hello, I'm Shelley at Horn Photo, and it's time to do more with your pictures. Get those images out of your camera, off your computer, and rescued from deep within your phone, and turn them into memorable photo keepsakes and gifts. Here at Horn Photo in Fresno, we have many wonderful photo items that we produce in-house, and we're here to help you find your individual style. So now's the time. Stop by Horn Photo in the Bellagio at Blackstone and East, or visit us online at hornphoto.com to explore the possibilities.
Open house this Sunday, 815 East McKinley, near Maroa. You can own this house for $1,800 a month. There's a whole apartment in the back that you could rent out for $1,200 a month and live in this house for $600 a month. Open house this Sunday. Go to MikeBriggsProperties.com for details.
Back to CentralValleyTalk.com. I'm Mike Scott.
Vincent, thanks for coming in today.
It's Michelle again.
Michelle, Miss Stasis.
Guy Adams joins me once again. How are you, Guy? Good to see you.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
She's my old friend, not meaning age. We go way back. Miss Beverly Rain.
Watch the Central Valley Talk Hour, weekdays on Digital Channel 33.2. Weekdays at 3 p.m. All local, all live, all the time.
So we'll be back with more on CentralValleyTalk.com.
We'll see you next week.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Well, welcome back. It's New Thought Talk. I am the Reverend Steve Walling, and today we're talking about kind of laying a foundation for our understanding of God and how God has evolved over the history of humanity, if you will. And we left off the last segment. I was talking about the Ebionites. And the Ebionites were early Christians. They believed that you had to become a Jew to become a Christian, which meant back in the day that if you were a male and you chose to become a Christian, you had to be circumcised. And the Bible tells us that there was conflict between Paul and the apostles, the former disciples of Jesus, and there were a period where they got together and they worked this out and decided that it wasn't necessarily so. things began to change. But at the same time, we also had the Gnostics, and the Gnostics were a group that some of them claimed to be Christian, but their understanding of God was actually, some of them had as many as 360 gods. So, there's the Gnostics hanging around out there. And I mentioned Marcion and his understanding of two gods, and then what we call the Proto-Orthodox Church, which was they called themselves monotheistic. But we'll get to this because this is something that it's a play on words, and we need to be aware of. So anyway, all these groups came together. Paul, at about 20 years after the death of Jesus, he writes his first epistle. Somewhere about 35 years after the death of Jesus, the author that wrote the book that we attribute to somebody that's named Mark wrote Mark. But again, history and archaeology tells us that the author of the book of Mark is someone that we don't know. The name, the attribution of the name came later. The same with Luke and Matthew and John. None of them were written by the individuals that hold that name, but that's, again, this all evolved, and that's the purpose of what I'm laying out here. This was an evolutionary process, how it all came together. It wasn't until we begin to get into the 2nd century that the Proto-Orthodox Church, the early church fathers, began to have an understanding of what we now know as the Trinity, and that went through various understandings and definitions until about the 4th century, where it was finally codified. And about that time in the 4th century, now we've got the 27 books that comprise the New Testament have come together. But the books that we have today are not necessarily the books as they were written back then. And we know this to be true because in the earliest texts that we have copies of, there's so many they call them variants or variations, that there's actually, between all the texts we got, there are more variations than there are words in the text. And why is this important? This is important because there is a whole understanding that this book is the inerrant, exact Word of God. And people that have grown up with that understanding, that have come to a realization that maybe that's not the case, sometimes this can have tragic results in their lives. They feel betrayed. They leave their belief system that has been their foundation for their life expression. Oftentimes, they become atheists. They become angry. And a lot of your prominent atheists come just out of that group of people. Some of them are people that have taken a look at this book and the religion that has grown up around this book, and they've looked at it in the light of geology, archaeology, of science, the various things that have, as mankind has evolved over these 2,000 years, as they look at it, they go, well, this doesn't hold up with this. And of course, one of the great arguments came about as a result of Darwin and his understanding and his theory of evolution. Of course, then you had the creationist understanding and this argument back and forth. But the truth be told, the archaeological and the geological record show that the Earth has been here a long time, that we're not the center of the universe, that the planets do not revolve around us. And as we look at the church history, we see where people like Galileo, Copernicus, you come up to Newton, he ran into some issues with the church fathers. There's a fellow by the name of Michael Servetus Villanobis, and in New Thought, he is our New Thought martyr. He lived about the time of the Protestant Reformation, and he took a look at the Trinity, and he said, no, I don't think so. He began to look at the earliest teachings of Jesus, and he said he understood that what Jesus was talking about was a God that was transcendent. Now, he didn't use the word transcendent, but that was the meaning, that there's a God that is everywhere, that there's nowhere that God is not. And he anonymously wrote a little booklet and had it published. And he wrote a couple others, and word got out that he was the author, and he had to take off, and he went on the run. And eventually he ended up in Switzerland, where John Calvin, who was a reformist, was in control there, and John Calvin had him arrested and ultimately had him burned at the stake as a heretic. And so, even in New Thought, we do have our martyrs. But that was the first understanding that really began to open up the consciousness that maybe God is not a guy. Maybe God is something greater than a guy. Maybe God is something that we can't even begin to understand. And from that point on, there were individuals, Meister Eckhart, there was a fellow by the name of Swedenborg, many other individuals, theologists and students of Christianity that they begin to delve into, and we talk about it being metaphysical or mystical, and they begin to see that what the dogma that the church was teaching was something that was a dogma of convenience. That wasn't necessarily a dogma based on what Jesus taught, and it wasn't a dogma that was based on what apparently was reality, but it was a dogma that worked, and it continued to work. When we come into the 19th century, we now have an explosion of biblical textual research, and particularly in Germany, but it was taking place in the United States also, and there was a revolution, if you will, an understanding of the Bible as not the inerrant Word of God, but a book that was inspired. The men that wrote it were inspired. They were spiritual individuals. A book that has a lot of truth in it. It has a lot of wisdom in it, but it's got a lot of controversy and conflict within it. It's got a lot of insertions, if you will, that weren't necessarily there in the original text. And just for example, we'll take, there is at the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 32, thereabouts. Don't quote me specifically, you'll have to look it up. But anyway, Paul is talking about prophesying in the church. And all of a sudden there's an insertion there of 2 verses talking about how women should not speak in the church and how they should be subject to their husbands. But our earliest text that we have of this particular letter does not have those 2 verses in it. They show up at a time when the church was moving out of the homes, from the early home churches, into the polis, or the community, and in the Hellenistic period, women ruled in the home. They ruled the home, and men ruled in the polis. And so there was a lot of women that had leadership roles in the early church, but as it began to move out into the community, the understanding out there was women didn't have a say. So somehow this found its way there, and then it's also in the pastoral epistles. But again, historical biblical criticism has pretty much laid to rest the fact that Paul didn't write the pastoral epistles. They were written sometime after he had died. There's a lot of evidence to that, and that's a story for another day. But that's how the book was used to lay about social change and social control, if you will. And over a period of time, through scribes writing and various things, the book evolved a little bit, and there was changes made, sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional. But it happened. And all through this time, we have God as being this being, the God that walked through the garden, until we get, like I say, we get to a period where enlightenment begins to come in, and people begin to look at God as something transcendent. So now then we've got the Germans, biblical scholars. We've got Carlyle in England, who he is a transcendentalist. We now have Emerson in the United States and various other groups of people, and they begin to see God not as this being, but God as this transcended everything. That if in the beginning there's God, then there's nothing else but God. The reason why this becomes important, because at this point there's now becoming a split. And in the 19th century, the church was pretty good with that. There was some resistance, but like New Thought, as it was going through its formative years, was very welcome in what we'll call mainstream Christian churches. It's not until we get to the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, and New Thought now is really beginning to grow. It's in all parts of society, and it's having major influences in many ways. And we've discussed some of those on the show, and we'll talk about them in the future. But New Thought is growing. But New Thought's not the only thing that's growing. There's other things going on. And at that point in time, around 1910, thereabouts, there was a couple of brothers, Lyman and Myron, I believe. Milton Stewart. And they got very concerned, and they paid to put together a group of books based on essays, and the books were called The Fundamentals. And basically, it was essays that were written by people that wanted to get back to the old belief. Now, in truth, that old belief never really existed, but that was their understanding. And so they wrote these books, which now, today, our fundamentalist movement comes from. And it was very repressive, very counter to what science was telling us, very counter to what the archaeological record was telling us, but it was a reaction, if you will, as to what was going on. So as we move into the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're finally going to get to talk about God as God has evolved. So I'll see you when you come back. Stay tuned. We got some good stuff.
Hiring great talent is essential to your business. However, it's also time-consuming, and time is money. Contact Wolf Recruiting of Fresno and gain access to candidates you will not find on the open job market. Candidates through Wolf Recruiting are considered the best of the best. Why? Because they're gainfully employed. Whether it's technology, accounting, sales, or general administration, Wolf Recruiting's versatile background brings a solid foundation to confidentially identifying the very best talent. Call Wolf Recruiting at 877-589-9441 or find us on the web at wolfrecruiting.com.
You need your carpets cleaned, but you don't have a lot of money. The solution is JRT Carpet Cleaning. Clean up to 3 bedrooms, living room, and hall for just $99. Let the professionals do the job. Call JRT Carpet Cleaning today.
Open house this Sunday, 815 East McKinley, near Maroa. You could own this house for $1,800 a month. There's a whole apartment in the back that you could rent out for $1,200 a month and live in this house for $600 a month. Open house this Sunday. Go to MikeBriggsProperties.com for details.
Before you call one of those discount insurance places, you should know the facts. Fresno's CCIS can get you up to a 26% discount on your car, homeowners, and life insurance needs. Call 320-2247 or go to ccisinsurance.com.
Considering solar? Whether you're ready to buy now or just exploring your options, the consultants at Solar Negotiators are here to help you. A call to Solar Negotiators is like calling 5 solar companies at once. You see, when local established solar contractors have gaps in their schedule, they call Solar Negotiators to fill them. Right now, get 5 years of panel cleaning and maintenance or $1,000 off your new solar panels. So stop wasting your time searching and call Solar Negotiators, because when contractors compete for your business, you win.
What's new at the Fulton 55? Fulton 55 is Fresno's hottest venue at Fulton and Divisadero.
Open house this Saturday, 7752 North 8th Street near Millbrook. If you've been on your job or in your industry for a year, you can buy this home for under $1,200 per month. Stop by our open house this Saturday at 1. Go to MikeBriggsProperties.com for details.
In 1985, Larry Korth set out to help his friends, family, and community find affordable ways to buy a home or a business property. 30 years later, Mid-Valley Financial is the premier mortgage banker in the Central Valley. The professional staff at Mid-Valley will find the best mortgage products for your family. Mid-Valley Financial takes great pride in being the Central Valley's local lender. Visit us at midvalleyfinancial.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in beautiful downtown Madera. And today we're talking about the evolution of God, but actually what we're really talking about is the evolution of our understanding of who and what this thing that we call God is. So we left off, I was talking about the Stewart brothers and their book, The Fundamentals. There was a big reaction within the country at that time, and the movement of fundamentalism really had its birth at that point. And it moved on, and it became an issue until in about 1922, there was a minister, a Presbyterian minister in New York, a fellow by the name of Harry Emerson Fosdick, and he gave a speech entitled, Shall the Fundamentalists Win? Defending Liberal Protestantism in the 1920s. And this speech became nationally famous. He was subsequently fired from his position, but it prompted John D. Rockefeller to build the famous Riverside Church in New York for Harry Fosdick. And that church has been instrumental over the years. It has had Martin Luther King speak there, many other greats in the world, in the spiritual world, have had a format or a forum to speak there. And it's been powerful. But there was this conflict going on between, if we see God as the guy that walks through the garden, as God as this transcendent being, essence, energy, or whatever you want to define it as, and time comes on. So we're going to move up right now into our time in the 22nd or 21st century, and we have many, many people that have grown up with the idea of this oppressive God. Yes, God gave his only begotten Son, so the story goes, with a blood sacrifice, the atonement of all of mankind. But that's not the God that Jesus taught about. That's not the God that Jesus was teaching. The God that Jesus taught about was a God of love. And people, as they look at the historical record, they look at the archaeological record, they look at the record of how this book came together, and they see that maybe the story that has come down to them isn't really a story that is based in truth. There's a sense of betrayal. Someone that has so wrapped themselves up spiritually in an understanding to have the rug pulled out from underneath them, if you will, can be very painful. And like I say, some of those people, they left in pain and anger, and they've gone to the other side, and they've experienced life from the point of view of being an atheist. But there's other people out there that feel the need, the desire to connect spiritually, but they're lost. They don't know where to go. And that's one of the things that as I teach New Thought, is one of the things for me that is very exciting, because when we understand that God has not changed in 2,000, 6,000, 10,000, in a million years, God is, and God is all that is. By the mere fact that we try to define God, we actually limit God. So we have to understand that God is the unlimitedness, and God is this infiniteness, and is beyond our comprehension and understanding. But God is everywhere, that there is nowhere that God is not. Now, earlier in the show, I mentioned that the early Judean monotheists, and not so much the early ones, but later on, particularly after they had come into contact with Zoroastrianism, there was this new being that came on the stage, if you will. This being we know as the devil. And the devil, you have to understand, if you are a Bible-believing Christian, you are also a devil-believing Christian. And what is the devil, as you define it? The devil is a being that has supernatural powers, that is everywhere present, that can lead you astray, that is in opposition to God. He's ultimately going to lose, but the devil holds a place in your belief system as a lesser God. Whether you choose to call it a God or not, and a rose by any other name, will it smell as sweet? The devil, for people that believe in the devil, is a divine being. Maybe not the one that you want living next door to you, but a divine being nonetheless. So people that believe in God and the devil, they actually believe in two deities. It's no different than believing in Zeus and Loki. Odin and whoever, Odin's opposition was. This is, and history and archaeology tell us that this has evolved through mankind's understanding. And all of this, including, when we talk about religion, is really just mankind's attempt to understand our place in the greater scheme of things, and we've used this. And so in Christianity, what we did was we created a box. We called it the New Testament, or the Bible. Got this box. And we have kept God in that box. Now, people that have thought outside of that box see God a little bit different. But those people that try to keep everything in that box, that's where God is. That God is a God of, although they like to say it's a God of 2,000 years ago, the God of Jesus, oftentimes it's the God of the Old Testament, going back 3,000 and 4,000 years ago. That God that will punish you, that God that will condemn you to an eternity of suffering and damnation. That's not the God that we understand. Those that study the historical record understand that Jesus actually taught. So for someone that has been burned, if you will, by that old thought, and they're looking for some way to connect themselves to a spiritual connection, this is where, as we begin to see how New Thought, and New Thought is not the only way, but it is definitely one way, that sees a transcendent God, begins to address those issues. Because just like we understand that the earth is not flat, the earth didn't change, the earth didn't evolve, our understanding of the earth changed and evolved. We now know the earth is not flat, it's a sphere. The earth is not the center of the universe. The universe didn't change. Our understanding of the universe changed. Our understanding evolved. We don't believe anything today, basically, that we believed 2,000 years ago, that history and experience has taught us that there's something else different. Our understanding and our beliefs have changed to work with what we have learned as humanity in all regards, except we keep God in this box 2,000 years ago. And yet, science, history, the geological record, archaeology, tells us something that is far outside this box that people want to keep God in. Well, New Thought explodes that box. We don't throw the box out. We don't throw the book out. We go to the book for the wisdom and the teachings and the truths that are there, but we also know that there are other things that humanity has learned in 2,000 years that we have to incorporate into our understanding, our greater understanding of a greater God, a greater reality, a greater presence. And so as we see this, we begin to see that the universe is not this being and a list and people living on this earth, but the universe is it's a beautiful interplay of energies that change and morph between matter and energy, between light and reality, but it's all this oneness, all this unity, and that this energy, everything that we understand, is the dynamic, the immanent presence of that which we call God. And as conscious beings, as we think, as we have new thoughts, as we begin to understand our place, we begin to see that thoughts, being energy, have an interplay, an interface with that which we call God, which means that we have a role in creating our own experience in this life. I tell people that life is good because life is God. All life is God. Life is not always pleasant. Life is as pleasant as we choose to make it. Even in those dire situations, we always have control as to how we react, how we interplay, how it's going to play out in our lives. And oftentimes, those life experiences that we have seen as very upsetting or tragic or whatever, looking back in 2020 hindsight, we see that for us, it was a growth point, a point of change in our life that ultimately worked for the better. How we choose to live, how we choose to interact is is something that is based personally within us. But also, so is our understanding of God. Because I don't care whether you are a Bible-believing Christian or whether you are an atheist or anywhere in between, whether you are a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu, it doesn't make any difference. We all, even within our own church, wherever our church is, our definition of God is extremely personal. You know, we read the books, we listen to the preachers, the ministers, the teachers, the imams, or whatever. But it is what we take within ourselves based on our life experience is how we actually individually define God. So we might be close, but we're not exactly the same. And that's the way it should be, although it's been taught for so long that that's the way it shouldn't be. But as we begin to realize this, as we begin to realize that our understanding of God has evolved to a greater God, to a God that is transcendent, that is available to us, not this God that has been kept in a box that's 2,000 years old, but this greater presence, that humanity is a completeness, not a singularness. It's not Steve and nothing else. It's a unity of allness. And because we're all some part of that greater energy, that greater good and that greater God. And so our consciousness begins to open up to this. Then as we align ourselves, we begin to see that as we have faith and belief in this reality of truth, that there is an absolute, that the reality of truth, that absoluteness, begins to respond to us and begins to unfold and morph in our lives. And then we experience an evolution of God expressing in our lives. And for me, that is New Thought. That's what it's all about. So we're going to our next break. I'll see you when you come back. I hope you've enjoyed this so far.
What's new at the Fulton 55? Fulton 55 is Fresno's hottest venue at Fulton and Divisadero.
You need your carpets cleaned, but you don't have a lot of money. The solution is JRT Carpet Cleaning. Clean up to 3 bedrooms, living room, and hall for just $99. Let the professionals do the job. Call JRT Carpet Cleaning today.
In 1985, Larry Korth set out to help his friends, family, and community find affordable ways to buy a home or a business property. 30 years later, Mid-Valley Financial is the premier mortgage banker in the Central Valley. The professional staff at Mid-Valley will find the best mortgage products for your family. Mid-Valley Financial takes great pride in being the Central Valley's local lender. Visit us at midvalleyfinancial.com.
Before you call one of those discount insurance places, you should know the facts. Fresno's CCIS can get you up to a 26% discount on your car, homeowners, and life insurance needs. Call 320-2247 or go to ccisinsurance.com.
Considering solar? Whether you're ready to buy now or just exploring your options, the consultants at Solar Negotiators are here to help you. A call to Solar Negotiators is like calling 5 solar companies at once. You see, when local established solar contractors have gaps in their schedule, they call Solar Negotiators to fill them. Right now, get 5 years of panel cleaning and maintenance or $1,000 off your new solar panels. So stop wasting your time searching and call Solar Negotiators, because when contractors compete for your business, you win.
Hello, I'm Shelley at Horn Photo, and it's time to do more with your pictures. Get those images out of your camera, off your computer, and rescued from deep within your phone, and turn them into memorable photo keepsakes and gifts. Here at Horn Photo in Fresno, we have many wonderful photo items that we produce in-house, and we're here to help you find your individual style. So now's the time. Stop by Horn Photo in the Bellagio at Blackstone and East, or visit us online at hornphoto.com to explore the possibilities.
Open house this Sunday, 815 East McKinley, near Maroa. You can own this house for $1,800 a month. There's a whole apartment in the back that you can rent out for $1,200 a month and live in this house for $600 a month. Open house this Sunday. Go to MikeBriggsProperties.com for details.
Welcome Welcome back to CentralValleyTalk.com. I'm Mike Scott.
Vincent, thanks for coming in today.
I know it's Michelle again.
Michelle, Miss Stasis.
Guy Adams joins me once again. How are you, Guy? Good to see you.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
She's my old friend, not meaning age. We go way back. Miss Beverly Rain.
Watch the Central Valley Talk Hour, weekdays on digital channel 33.2. Weekdays at 3 p.m. All local, all live, all the time.
So we'll be back with more on CentralValleyTalk.com.
We'll see you next week.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back. It's New Thought Talk. I'm the Reverend Steve Walling, and we've been talking about our evolutionary understanding of God. Now, if you've been with us from the beginning of the show, I've got to tell you that a lot of the mainstream ministers and pastors and preachers have been exposed to the information that I've shared with you today. It's taught in seminaries all over the country, but oftentimes it's left behind in the seminary. It's not brought into the church, and oftentimes in some seminaries it's taught in a way that it's explained that, well, this is what the historians say, but we know something better. And you are, as a student in the seminary, expected to rely on your faith and your belief and not necessarily open yourself up to what history and science has told us. So it's reached a point today. There's a fellow by the name of Daniel Dennett, and he wrote a book called Caught in the Pulpit, Leaving Faith Behind. And it's based on research that he and a colleague have done with ministers, priests, pastors, rabbis that have experienced what you might call a loss of belief or a loss of faith, and how some of them have maintained their role in the pulpit and how some of them have left, how some of them in discovering this during the seminary process got out before they completed it. So this is not new. This is ongoing, and it's imminent in the world today. And as somebody that maybe you're one of those people that have been a little conflicted, there's a lot of information out there that you can use. You are, whether you realize it or not, and again, this is just science, you're hardwired to be a spiritual being. It's part of the brain's wiring to have a predilection towards spirituality. Well, you can believe that that's environment and evolution, or you can believe that maybe it's a result of some divine creation expressing itself through us, which is my preferred belief. But it is what it is, and this is what science has shown us. So there are available to you today many different avenues that you can seek out to support your spirituality, to walk a spiritual path. And even those of you who are watching who happen to consider yourself an atheist, you're still a spiritual being. I know a lot of very spiritual atheists. They meditate. They do a lot of things. They just deny the existence of God. And truth be told, as we understand a transcendent God, it doesn't make any difference. It's not important whether you have a personal belief in God or not. You know, if God exists, then God exists. If God doesn't exist, then God doesn't exist. But there are principles in the universe that respond to us. And for my way of thinking, to say that that's just happenstance may be a little bit beyond what I'm willing to do. I do believe in a God. I believe in a transcendent God. I believe that God is a presence and a power in the universe, that God is available to each and every one of us when we understand and accept and open ourselves up to that understanding. And as we do so, what we do is we align ourselves with that powerful spiritual energy. We are spiritual beings, having a physical expression we call life. We have the ability to participate in our life and not be a victim in life. We have the ability to work on healing processes, work on conditions in our lives. We don't have to accept, we don't have to live in fear, but we have to know, and we have to know that we know, and that's our first step forward. So the purpose of the whole show today is to help enlighten those of you that are at that point. You're thinking, you're looking for something. There is something out there that is available to you. And There are New Thought centers around everywhere that you can go to. You can find them on the computer at New Thought or findacenter.com. There's library resources at newthoughtlibrary.com. You know, if you've been a viewer of this show, you can look me up on Facebook, Steve Walling, and I'm there as the senior minister of the Spiritual Awareness Center in Madera. You can look up this show on Facebook. It is New Thought Talk with Rev Steve, and we have an archive there of past shows and great interviews with names in the New Thought community today, and people like I had Bishop Carlton Pearson on the show several weeks ago. Now, Bishop Pearson was a Pentecostal, fifth generation Pentecostal minister, and as he began to study, and he studied the things that I talked to you about today, he began to realize that God is something far more than what the Bible had, that box. God was far outside that box, and God can be outside of that box for you. He wrote a great book. It's entitled, God is Not a Christian, nor a Jew, nor a Muslim, or Hindu. And I highly recommend getting the book and reading it. He tells a little of his story. If you want to know his story, he wrote another book called The Gospel of Inclusion, how he came to understand what he understands today, and that's what he teaches today. And he's not alone. There's many others, and there are ministers in the pulpit that are yearning to leave. They want to teach something different, but economically they're tied to it. For various other reasons they're tied. So, you know, we've got to realize this is a time of revolution, my friends. This is a time of revolutionary understanding that we can begin to break free the bonds that have held us in servitude to a vengeful, wrathful, judgmental consciousness that has been perpetuated on us for so many years by organizations, not by God itself, not even by the teachings of Jesus, not even by the Bible. If we begin to really look how it first came out, how it evolved, and we begin to understand that, there's so much out there for you that you can take and use and embody and utilize in your life to become all that you were created to be. And you were created to be an expression of all that you have in your life. Now, that doesn't mean that you're to be like me or like Bill Gates or anybody else. It means that we are all to express at the greatest ability, at the greatest extent, with the ability and the tools that we have. And when we do so, we live our life's purpose. And when we live our life's purpose, we are living in prosperity. We are living in abundance. We are living in love. We are living in peace. We are living in harmony. We are living the divine plan that has been laid out for us. And that is the promise of New Thought. That's the promise of what we teach. And that's the promise that if you take and apply it in your life, it will work for you. I want to thank you for being with us today. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been a little bit different show, but, you know, sometimes you just got to get to the fundamentals. And on that note, my friends, may the light of God surround you. May the love of God enfold you. May the power of God protect you, and the presence of God watch over you. For truly, wherever you are, God is, and all is well. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you when we come back.
Hiring great talent is essential to your business. However, it's also time-consuming, and time is money. Contact Wolf Recruiting of Fresno and gain access to candidates you will not find on the open job market. Candidates through Wolf Recruiting are considered the best of the best. Why? Because they're gainfully employed. Whether it's technology, accounting, sales, or general administration, Wolf Recruiting's versatile background brings a solid foundation to confidentially identifying the very best talent. Call Wolf Recruiting at 877-589-9441 or find us on the web at wolfrecruiting.com.
You need need your carpets cleaned, but you don't have a lot of money. The solution is JRT Carpet Cleaning. Clean up to 3 bedrooms, living room, and hall for just $99. Let the professionals do the job. Call JRT Carpet Cleaning today.
Open house this Sunday, 815 East McKinley, near Maroa. You could own this house for $1,800 a month. There's a whole apartment in the back that you could rent out for $1,200 a month and live in this house for $600 a month. Open house this Sunday. Go to MikeBriggsProperties.com for details.
Before you call one of those discount insurance places, you should know the facts. Fresno's CCIS can get you up to a 26% discount on your car, homeowners, and life insurance needs. Call 320-2247 or go to ccisinsurance.com.
Considering solar? Whether you're ready to buy now or just exploring your options, the consultants at Solar Negotiators are here to help you. A call to Solar Negotiators is like calling 5 solar companies at once. You see, when local established solar contractors have gaps in their schedule, they call Solar Negotiators to fill them. Right now, get 5 years of panel cleaning and maintenance or $1,000 off your new solar panels. So stop wasting your time searching and call Solar Negotiators, because when contractors compete for your business, you win.
What's new at the Fulton 55? Fulton 55 is Fresno's hottest venue at Fulton and Divisadero.
Open house this Saturday, 7752 North 8th Street near Millbrook. If you've been on your job or in your industry for a year, you can buy this home for under $1,200 per month. Stop by our open house this Saturday at 1. Go to MikeBriggsProperties.com for details.
In 1985, Larry Korth set out to help his friends, family, and community find affordable ways to buy a home or a business property. 30 years later, Mid-Valley Financial is the premier mortgage banker in the Central Valley. The professional staff at Mid-Valley will find the best mortgage products for your family. Mid-Valley Financial takes great pride in being the Central Valley's local lender. Visit us at midvalleyfinancial.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com